Milltown, Maine. That's what folks called it. Even though the mill had shut down 15 years ago, and the town had been dying ever since. Dying towns have a smell, a taste, even a sound. The air tastes of rust. The streets echo with empty storefront glass rattling in the wind, and every sound seems just a little too loud in the silence. And then there was the tower. The radio tower sat on a low hill just outside town. Built in the 1950s, it had once broadcast AM country music, local news, high school football games. Kids growing up in Milltown remembered falling asleep to the slow drone of old country singers. The announcer with a lazy Maine drawl or a Red Sox game carried on the signal. But the tower went dead the same year the mill closed. Hush. It just stood there after rust eating its bones, wires dangling like entrails. Nobody bothered to tear it down, too expensive. Then, one September night, the tower came back to life. It was Dean Clary who heard it first. Dean was 52, a shiftless man with a gray beard and nicotine-stained fingers. He lived alone in a trailer and had a habit of sitting up late, fiddling with the dials of an ancient Philco radio he'd never thrown out. That night, he twisted past the dead stations, past static and preacher talk, until a faint, warbling voice came through on 680 AM. A woman's voice. "Help, please God, someone help me." Dean froze. The voice was weak, almost buried in static. No, but he knew it. He knew it like he knew his own name. It was his daughter, Tammy. Only Tammy was 30 miles away, living in Bangor and very much alive. Dean called her right then, hands shaking. She picked up, groggy and annoyed, but fine, perfectly fine. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. More voices within a week. Half the town had heard the tower. Mary Givens swore she heard her dead husband, Eddie, calling her name in that slow, familiar baritone. Little Emma Lawson said she heard her mommy's voice telling her not to go outside. Problem was, Emma's mom was in the next room, folding laundry. Old Mr. Perkins, half drunk on wild turkey, claimed he heard himself. Not as he was now, but older, weaker, begging someone not to leave him alone in the dark. And soon the story spread the way bad stories always do in small towns, whispered over coffee at the diner, muttered across bar counters, murmured in the frozen aisle of the food mart, the voices on the dead frequency, the desperate cries. Some folks tried to laugh it off. Old wiring, freak weather, some glitch bouncing signals from other towns. But nobody laughed very hard. Because every night, more people heard their own voices. Sheriff Ray Miller, didn't believe in ghost stories. He was 60, stocky, with a face like old leather and a voice that carried authority. But even Ray wasn't immune. One night, while driving past the tower on patrol, he flicked on the radio. Ray, the voice on 680 AM, said, a man's voice, his own. "Ray, you left me here. Why'd you leave me?" The sheriff almost drove into the ditch. The voice on the radio was cracked, pained, older, but it was him crying, him begging. Ray pulled over, heart hammering, and sat in the dark cruiser with the radio hissing. He told no one about it, not his deputies, not his wife. But he started avoiding the road past the tower. Group of teenagers, because there are always teenagers in stories like this, decided to test the tower. They drove up one night in Josh Miller's beat-up Ford, parked at the base of the rusting skeleton, and brought a tape recorder. They tuned into 680 AM and listened. At first, nothing, static. Then, a voice. "Josh, don't go up there. Don't." It was Josh's own voice. The recorder caught every word. They left in a panic, tires spitting gravel, Josh pale as a sheet. The next morning, the tape was blank. By October, the whole town was unraveling. People stopped driving near the tower. Kids wouldn't walk past it on their way to school. Radios were smashed, unplugged, thrown into dumpsters, but it didn't matter. The voices spread. One woman swore she heard her own voice whispering from the baby monitor. Okay. Another said it came from her TV when the signal went fuzzy. Even cell phones weren't safe garbled echoes. Your own voice, begging, pleading, "Help me, don't leave me, please, not again." The worst part wasn't just the voices. It was what they said. They spoke of being trapped, lost, suffering. They spoke of futures that hadn't happened yet, of deaths that hadn't come. And the tower kept broadcasting every night. On Halloween night, a nor'easter rolled in. Rain hammered rooftops. Wind howled down empty streets, and the power went out. But the tower lit up. Folks saw it from their windows. The red beacon at the top, blinking through the rain for the first time in decades. The whole structure humming like a living thing, and every radio in town clicked on at once. No electricity, no batteries needed. Just the dead frequency filling every home with voices. Not strangers, not ghosts, okay? The voices of Milltown itself. Men and women crying, begging, screaming. Future selves, dying selves. Some heard themselves burning, some drowning, some weeping in hospital beds, some buried alive. And through it all, the tower pulsed and sang with static, as if feeding on the fear. The next morning, the storm passed. The sun came out. The tower stood silent, rusting in the weak light. But Milltown wasn't the same. Half the folks packed up and left within weeks, too shaken to stay. The ones who remained moved like ghosts, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation. Radios were outlawed in houses. The sheriff took a shotgun to the base of the tower, but no shell could bring it down. The metal rang like bone. Dean Clary stopped sleeping altogether. He said he kept hearing Tammy's voice, even without a radio. Sometimes she was begging, sometimes she was screaming, and sometimes she was laughing. By spring, Dean put a bullet through his head, okay? And the tower waited, because dying towns have a smell, a taste, a sound. And sometimes they also have a voice. Story 2 house that ate the winter. The Carters bought the old Victorian house in July, the hottest month on record in Maine. The realtor called it a fixer-upper with character. Mark Carter called it a money pit, though he signed the papers anyway, because his wife, Karen, fell in love with the place. It sat at the edge of town, a 3-story relic with peeling green paint, sagging gutters, and a widow's walk perched on top like a crown. The neighbors called it the Chandler place, though no Chandler had lived there for 50 years. So the first thing the Carters noticed wasn't the house itself, it was the yard. While the rest of town baked in the July heat, the yard around the Chandler place was covered in snow. Not just a patch here and there, but inches of it white, crusted, glittering under the summer sun. Some kind of trick, Mark muttered that first day, crunching through the snow in his sneakers. Underground springs, cold pockets, something. Karen shivered in her sundress and smiled anyway. It's beautiful. Their 10-year-old son, Danny, didn't care about explanations. He whooped with joy, scooping up a handful of snow and flinging it at his sister. Ellie, 14, squealed and ducked. "Stop it, idiot. It's July." But she laughed all the same. The realtor only smiled, tight-lipped, as if she'd been waiting for them to notice. Moving in. Inside, the house was cold, too. Not the still, stuffy cold of an old building with no AC. This was sharp, biting, the kind that crept into your bones. The radiators were ancient, but they worked fine. They just didn't seem to make a difference. Karen bought sweaters in August. She called it cozy. At night, when the house groaned and settled, Mark thought he heard something under the floorboards. Not rats, not pipes, something moving. He told himself it was just nerves. New house, old house, whatever. But still, he started leaving the hall light on. Neighbors avoided walking past the Chandler place. Kids on bikes swerved to the other side of the street. When Karen asked about it at the general store, the clerk only shrugged. "That house don't take kindly to strangers." Karen laughed it off. But later, when she drove home, she noticed the look-tight smiles, quick glances, whispers. By mid-September, when the rest of Maine turned gold and red, the Chandler yard was still deep in snow. The drifts grew higher, pressing against the porch, burying the garden. Danny built a snowman in the front yard. The next morning, it was gone. Not melted gone. The carrot nose, the scarf, the buttons, all of it swallowed up. It was Ellie who said it first. "The house is eating the cold." She stood in her room, staring out the window at the snow piled against the glass. Her breath came in puffs. "It's like it wants to keep it all, like it's feeding on it." Karen told her not to talk nonsense. But she had noticed things too. Frost on the inside of the windows, even when the heat was running full blast. Her coffee going cold in her hands. The sound of something breathing when the wind rattled the eaves. At night, Karen sometimes dreamed she was buried in snow, unable to move, while the house whispered around her, "Stay, stay forever." By October, Danny's room was freezing. His breath fogged in the air. His blankets were never enough. One morning, Mark found him curled up on the floor in front of the radiator, lips blue, teeth chattering. "I heard it," Danny whispered. "It's the snow. It was calling me. It wanted me to come outside." Mark forced a laugh. "Bad dream, buddy. That's all." But when he checked Danny's window, there were handprints in the frost from the inside. On Halloween night, a storm rolled in. Not rain, snow. Heavy, blinding snow that buried the whole house. Mark tried to shovel the porch, but the snow seemed to push back, filling in behind him. His hands went numb, his ears burned. Inside, the windows frosted over completely. The house groaned like an animal in pain or hunger. Danny stood at the door, eyes glassy. "It's calling me again, Dad. The winter. It wants me." Mark grabbed him, shook him. "Don't you ever say that. Don't you listen?" But Danny's skin was so cold, it burned his hands. That night, Karen dreamed she was walking through the house, barefoot. Snow covered the floor. Her breath plumed in the air. At the end of the hall, a door stood open. Inside was a forest of ice, trees made of frozen glass, branches heavy with icicles. The floor cracked beneath her feet. In the center stood the house itself, her house huge and looming, made of snow and bone, whispering in 1,000 voices. "Stay, stay forever. Feed the winter. Join us." When she woke, her pillow was wet with melted snow. By December, the Carters lived in silence. The town had stopped talking to them. No Christmas cards, no carolers, just the endless snow outside their windows. The heat was useless, the food spoiled in the cold. Ellie cried herself to sleep each night, her body trembling, and Danny was slipping away. He stared out the window for hours, lips moving soundlessly. When Mark shook him, he only said, "They're waiting." On Christmas Eve, the snow rose higher than the windows. The house was buried alive. That night, Mark woke to find Danny's bed empty, the window open. Outside, the snow glowed faintly blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. Mark ran into the yard, barefoot, screaming his son's name. He saw shapes in the snow faces, arms reaching, mouths open in silent screams. Kay sank to his knees, the cold tearing at his skin, and he heard it too. "Join us. Join the winter." In the spring, the snow melted everywhere in town, everywhere but the Chandler place. When the sheriff finally forced the door, the house was empty. No Carters, no sign of struggle, just frost on the walls, thick as paint. And if you put your ear against the ice, you could hear voices. A man screaming, a woman sobbing, girl whispering prayers, and a boy laughing. Story 3 by Dead Mile Road. There's a stretch of Route 117 between Ashford and Kidder's Crossing. 20 miles of dark woods and broken guardrails. It's a kind of road where your headlights carve tunnels through the trees and your radio fizzles with static. Folks in town call it Dead Mile Road. Most of the year, it's just another lonely highway. But on Halloween night, that stretch of road does something it shouldn't. It grows. The first loop Terry Holt found out the hard way. He was driving home late, his pickup rattling down 117, a six-pack riding shotgun. It was just after midnight when he noticed the mile marker mile 12. He frowned, because there was no mile 12. That part of the road had been straightened years ago, cutting it down. Still, the sign stood there, green numbers glowing in his headlights. 12. He shook it off, took a swig, kept driving. A song came on the radio, an old Stones tune, but it skipped and warped. He smacked the dash. A few minutes later, another green sign loomed. Mile 12 again. Terry slowed. What the hell? The woods outside pressed close, too close, branches scraping the side of the truck. He drove on. Can I get mile 12? By the fourth time, sweat slicked his palms. His beer was forgotten. His heart thudded hard against his ribs. That was when he saw it. Something ran alongside the truck, keeping pace just beyond the tree line. It's too fast for any animal, too big. He caught glimpses between the trunks. Long arms, pale skin, a mouth that stretched too wide. Floored it. The truck roared. The speedometer climbed, but the thing kept pace. And when he dared glance left, it was right there, matching him stride for stride. Its face turned toward him, grinning in the dark. Terry screamed, slammed his foot down, and the next thing he knew, he was rolling into Ashford's main street, the neon of the gas station burning like salvation. He never drove Route 117 again. Word got around the way it always does. People said every Halloween a mile appears on Route 117. Doesn't matter if you're sober, drunk, alone, or with friends. You hit mile 12 and you loop. Some folks claim they've driven for hours, trapped in that mile, circling through hell while something in the woods chased them. Most make it out. Eventually, the road spits you back where you were headed, but not everyone. Now and then, a car vanishes. A teenager, a trucker, a traveling salesman. Their engines found idling by the roadside, doors wide open, no driver. And if you walk that road the next morning, you'll see the prints in the dirt, spare footprints, long strides, too long. The Carsons didn't believe in ghost stories. They were heading home from a Halloween party in Kidder's Crossing, their kids asleep in the back seat, candy buckets rattling. Ellie drove. Mark dozed, beer heavy, snoring softly. When the green sign loomed out of the dark, she frowned. Mile 12. That can't be right. She eased past, headlights cutting through the trees. The woods looked wrong somehow, denser, blacker. Mark stirred. What? Nothing. I think we're lost. A few minutes later, another sign. Mile 12. Her stomach dropped. The kids stirred in the back, murmuring in their sleep. The car seemed too cold, her breath fogging the windshield. Turn around, Mark muttered, rubbing his eyes. Missed a turn. Ellie tried. Tease. She spun the wheel, pulled a U-turn, but the road was the same. Still mile 12, and then she saw it. In the tree line, running alongside. Pale and lean, its limbs bending wrong. It moved like a shadow stretched too thin, its head lolling, jaw hanging open in a grin that showed far too many teeth. Oh God, Ellie whispered. Mark saw it too. Drive. Just drive. She did. The speedometer climbed. The kids woke, crying in the back, but the thing ran faster. And now there was more than one. Shadows in the trees, shapes keeping pace, faces turning, grinning, mouths open wide, as if they were laughing. For an hour, maybe more, they drove. Every bend led back to mile 12. Every mile marker the same. The kids sobbed. Mark prayed under his breath. Ellie gripped the wheel until her knuckles bled white. "Okay." And the whole time, the things ran beside them, not trying to pass, not trying to attack, just waiting. Every so often, one darted closer, long fingers brushing the side of the car, nails scraping metal. The gas gauge dropped. Ellie's heart sank. They'd run out before the road let them go. Mark turned, pale as chalk. "Don't slow down. Whatever you do, don't stop." But she was already slowing. The car shuddered, engine coughing. "Ellie." She stumped the pedal, but the tank was empty. The car rolled to a stop. The woods went silent. The kids whimpered. Mark fumbled for the door locks. "Don't look. Don't let them in." Ellie sat frozen, eyes on the tree line. Shapes moved closer now, stepping from the dark. Dozens of them. Too tall, too thin, faces grinning, mouths open in silent laughter. One stepped into the headlights. Its skin was gray, its eyes pits, its smile splitting ear to ear. It raised a hand, long fingers curling. The kids screamed. The headlights flickered. The car's engine died, and mile 12 swallowed them whole. After the next morning, Route 117 was normal again. No mile 12, no footprints. But the Carsons' minivan sat abandoned at the side of the road. Doors open, candy buckets spilled. Inside, frost coated the seats. And on the windshield, traced in the ice, were 4 words: "See you next year." Ethan Burke was 9 years old when he first saw the man in the mirror. It was a Tuesday morning, late October, the kind of Maine morning where the sky hung low and gray like a dirty blanket. Ethan stood on the bathroom stool, brushing his teeth, when he noticed something strange. Behind his reflection, just over his shoulder, stood a man. The man was tall and thin, his skin pale as milk, his mouth a dark slit. He wore a long coat, stitched from patches. Only they weren't patches. They were eyes, hundreds of them, sewn into the fabric, blinking and rolling. Blue, brown, green, hazel, some bloodshot, some milky with age, all of them watching. Ethan spun around. The bathroom was empty. When he turned back to the mirror, the man was gone. He didn't tell his mom. She already thought he had too much imagination. Decayed. But the man in the mirror kept coming back. Sometimes in the bathroom, sometimes in the hall mirror, sometimes in the reflection of the TV when it was turned off. Always the same. Tall, thin, pale, always wearing that coat, always watching, and every time more eyes appeared in the coat. It was the same week Mr. Harlan went missing. He was the janitor at the elementary school, a quiet man who smelled like bleach and pipe tobacco. One morning, he just didn't show up. The sheriff found his mop bucket tipped over in the hall, his glasses on the floor, and his eyes just his size, sitting neatly on the windowsill. Ethan heard the whispers at school, heard his teacher say, "Just like the others." But when he looked at the window that night, in the reflection of the dark glass, he saw the man in the coat again. And this time, he recognized the new eyes stitched near the collar. They were Mr. Harlan's. Finally, Ethan told his best friend, Joey. "He's real," Ethan whispered during recess. "It's the man in the coat. He's taking people's eyes." Joey laughed at first, like the boogeyman. "No, I see him in mirrors. He's got eyes all over him. And now he's got Mr. Harlan's too." Joey's grin faltered. "That's gross." That night, Joey called Ethan, his voice shaking. "I saw him too, in my bathroom mirror." He was smiling at me. 2 days later, Joey didn't come to school. At the end of the week, the sheriff found his bike in the ditch, his helmet, his shoes, and his eyes. After Joey, the whole town grew quiet. Folks locked their doors, covered their mirrors with sheets. But it didn't help. Old Mrs. Perkins vanished from her living room chair. Deputy Howard disappeared from his cruiser, motor still running. Each time, the same sign left behind, eyes carefully placed. Ethan's mom tried to keep the news from him, but he heard the word on everyone's lips: the collector. The man in the mirror began to change. He smiled more, tilted his head, studying Ethan like he was next on the list. Sometimes Ethan heard whispers when he brushed his teeth. One more, one more. He stopped looking in mirrors, stopped turning on the TV, but reflections are everywhere. In spoons, in windows, in puddles, and the collector was always there. One night, Ethan gathered his courage. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, heart pounding. "What do you want?" he whispered. The collector's smile widened. His voice was like glass, cracking. "Eyes, yours are so bright, so young. I must have them." Ethan shook his head, tears burning. "No." The collector leaned closer, pressing his pale face against the glass. The coat rustled. All those eyes rolled and blinked, staring at Ethan. "Then I will take them." Ethan tried to tell his mom. She only hugged him tight, smoothing his hair. "It's just dreams, honey, it's dreams." But that night, she vanished too. Ethan found her slippers by the bed, and her eyes on the nightstand. He screamed until his throat tore raw. On Halloween, the sheriff led a search party through town. They found empty houses, abandoned cars, half-finished dinners, still steaming on plates. No people, only eyes, hundreds of them. When they broke into the Burke house, they found Ethan's room empty, his toys scattered, his blankets twisted. On the desk, the mirror stood uncovered, and in it, the collector smiled, his coat heavier now, stitched with dozens more eyes. At the very center, two small, frightened blue ones blinked slowly. Story 5 by Ashes in the Orchard. The fire came in July, a dry summer. No rain for weeks, and when the lightning struck, the whole orchard went up like paper. Sam Doolin watched it from the porch, helpless. Rows and rows of apple trees, his family's pride for 3 generations, turning into black skeletons against the red sky. The smell of burning wood and fruit carried for miles. Folks said it smelled like pie left too long in the oven. Sam thought it smelled like the end of everything. By morning, the orchard was gone. Charred earth stretched 4 acres, nothing left but ash and silence. Sam stood there, soot streaked across his face, hands shaking, and swore he'd bring it back. By September, he had replanted rows of saplings, neat and green, watered daily. His neighbors shook their heads, said the soil was ruined, cursed by the fire. But Sam didn't care. The orchard was all he had. The first trees bore fruit faster than anyone expected. By spring, apples hung heavy on the branches, red and round. It's too early, too perfect. Sam picked one, rubbed it on his sleeve, and took a bite. The skin split with a crunch, but instead of white flesh, black ash spilled onto his tongue. Bitter, dry, choking. He spat it out, coughing, wiping his mouth. Something gleamed a half-eaten apple. Something gleamed. A tooth, small, white, human. Sam threw the apple away, heart pounding. But the trees kept bearing more. Dozens, then hundreds. Apples that bled ash when bitten. Apples hiding teeth. He should have burned the orchard again. Kay should have cut the trees down, salted the earth, walked away. But he didn't. He told himself it was just a sickness, a fluke, something he could fix. Then folks started eating them. It was Tommy Crenshaw first. He's 12 years old, snuck in with his friends, dared to grab an apple. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. That night, Tommy dreamed he was standing in the orchard, while fire roared around him. His skin blistered, his hair burned. He screamed and screamed, but no one came. He woke up clawing at his sheets, gasping for air. His mother found him stiff and blackened, as if the fire had followed him into the real world. Word spread, but not fast enough. Teenagers sneaked in for dares. Travelers stopped along the road, not knowing the story. More bodies, more burned husks. And still, the trees grew heavy with apples. Sam couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw the fire. Not the wildfire from last year, but something deeper, older. He dreamed of men and women burning on stakes, screaming as flames ate their flesh. He dreamed of their teeth falling like hail, scattering into the earth. He woke with ash on his tongue. The town begged him to cut it down, but Sam refused. "It's mine," he told them, his voice ragged. "It's all I got left." He patrolled the orchard at night with a shotgun, eyes sunken, clothes hanging off his frame. Some folks said they saw him eating the apples himself, crunching down on the black flesh, teeth breaking under his teeth. More and more people vanished. A hunter, a pair of hikers, a whole family driving through from out of state. Their car was found by the roadside, doors open, footprints in the dirt leading into the orchard. None of them ever came out, and always the smell of smoke lingered, even when no fire burned. One night, Sheriff Grady went in after him. He found Sam kneeling among the trees, mouth and hands smeared with soot, eyes wild. "They're hungry," Sam whispered. "The fire didn't kill them. It only planted them. They're still here, Kay, and they want us to join." Before the sheriff could stop him, Sam bit into another apple. Ash poured down his chin. A tooth stuck between his lips. He chewed, swallowed, and smiled. The sheriff dragged him out, but Sam never spoke again. He sat in a cell, rocking eyes fixed on a corner only he could see. When he finally died, his mouth was packed full of black ash. The orchard still stands. The trees grow thicker each year, branches heavy with their strange fruit. People say if you walk past at night, you'll hear whispers in the leaves, the sound of teeth grinding together. Sometimes you'll smell smoke, sharp and choking, and see faces in the dark between the trees. Faces blackened and burning, mouths open in endless screams. And if you're foolish enough to take an apple to taste that bitter ash, the fire will come for you too. You'll dream of burning alive, and you won't wake up. The town library was small, but it was old. The kind of old where the floors creaked and complained, and the smell of dust never left your nose. The kids didn't like it much. The shelves leaned crooked, the lights hummed, and the corners always seemed darker than they should have been. The librarian was old too, Miss Gracie Holloway. Nobody knew how long she'd worked there. Some folks said she'd been there since before their parents were born. She never married, never had kids, never even left town, far as anyone knew. She was just always there, moving slow among the shelves, her long gray hair tied in a bun, her lips always whispering to herself. Sometimes she whispered to the children. It started quiet little things. A boy standing by the picture books would hear her voice behind him, soft as paper turning. "Return the book you never borrowed." A girl at the craft table would feel the old woman's breath on her ear. "Bring it back to me." The kids told their parents, of course, but the parents laughed it off. "It's just old, honey." Probably talking to herself. That's what they said. But the kids swore it wasn't like that. She was talking to them. And only to them. The first to vanish was little Sarah Milligan. 7 years old, blonde pigtails, loved ponies. She was at the library on a Saturday morning, coloring at one of the small tables. Her mom stepped away for a minute to grab a book off the shelf. When she came back, Sarah was gone. The police searched every corner, the basement, the bathrooms, even the crawl space under the floorboards. Nothing, just her crayons left scattered across the table. A week later, a book appeared on the front steps of the library. No title, just a thin, hand-stitched thing with pages made of yellowed paper. Inside, written in a shaky child's hand, was a story. A story about a little girl named Sarah. It told of how Sarah wandered into the dark between the shelves, where the lights couldn't reach. How the librarian's voice guided her deeper. How she lay down on the cold floor, closed her eyes, and let the shadows cover her. The last page showed Sarah's picture, drawn in crayon. She was smiling, but her eyes were crossed out. More children vanished in the weeks that followed, each time the same. A parent looked away for only a moment, and the child was gone. Each time, a book appeared soon after, handmade, sloppy stitching. Paper, rough and uneven, always filled with a story written in the missing child's own handwriting. The stories were always about their deaths. Tommy Keller wrote of drowning in a black pond that wasn't on any map. Emily Hughes wrote of falling forever down a staircase that had no bottom. Jason Pruitt wrote of being locked inside a coffin-sized drawer, the lid nailed shut, while the librarian hummed a lullaby. By the time the third book appeared, parents stopped bringing their kids to the library. But it didn't matter. The children still came. They said Miss Holloway called to them in dreams, whispers through the vents at night. Return the book you never borrowed. It was Sheriff Wilkes who tried to put an end to it. He stormed into the library one gray afternoon, demanding answers. Folks outside heard him shouting at her. The old librarian never raised her voice. She just kept whispering back. When Wilkes didn't come out after an hour, the deputies went in after him. The library was empty. No Wilkes, no Holloway. It's just a new book sitting on the front desk. This one was thicker, bound tighter. Inside was a story about a sheriff who followed voices into the stacks and was smothered by 1,000 blank pages. The next day, the library was locked. The town council voted to close it down. The windows were boarded, the doors chained. For a while, things were quiet, but the books kept appearing, lit on doorsteps, on car seats, in mailboxes. Always handmade, always in a child's handwriting. Sometimes the stories were about kids no one had even realized were missing yet. By the time the parents ran to check their bedrooms, the beds were empty, the windows open. No one ever saw Miss Holloway again. But some nights, if you stood outside the boarded-up library, you could hear her voice drifting through the cracks, whispering, "Patient, return the books you never borrowed." People in town don't speak of her much anymore. It's too many bad memories, too much grief. But they keep the library locked, keep the boards nailed tight. Still, the books keep coming. New ones every month, sometimes left in neat piles on the steps of the town hall, always stitched by small hands, always telling how another child has died. If you're unlucky enough to open one, you might notice something. On the last page, scribbled faint in pencil, you'll see a line written by Miss Holloway herself. It always says the same thing: "Thank you for returning what was mine." And if you listen hard enough, you'll swear you can hear pages turning in the dark. The station at Blackwater had been closed for 30 years. The paint peeled, the benches rotted, and weeds pushed up between the tracks. Nobody went there anymore, except teenagers with beer cans and spray paint. Every Friday at midnight, a train came. People said it started 10 years ago. First, only a few drunks claimed they'd seen its headlights glowing down the tracks, steel wheels screaming. But soon, more folks swore it was real. They said the train looked whole, polished, spotless, like it had just rolled out of another time. The Blackwater Express, same as it had been in the 50s. It pulled into the station, doors sliding open with a hiss. Inside, lights spilled out, warm and inviting. Plush red seats, brass fixtures, windows shining like mirrors. But it wasn't real. Couldn't be. The line had been dead for decades. No conductor ever stepped off. No voice called for passengers. Just a train waiting, like it was holding its breath. And sometimes people climbed aboard. The first was an old man named Curtis Bell. He was drunk, stumbling home from the tavern. Folks say he laughed when he saw it, thought it was some kind of joke. He waved at the teenagers watching from the parking lot, shouted, "Guess I'll take the midnight special," and stepped inside. The doors shut behind him. The train pulled away. Curtis was never seen again. But the next Friday, when the train rolled past the crossing on the edge of town, folks swore they saw him. A shadow in the window, staring out, his mouth open, pressed against the glass, like he was screaming. After that, more people tried it. Some dared each other. Some were desperate. Few were just curious. None ever came back. And every week, more shadows filled the windows, faces half seen, hands pressed against the glass. The sheriff tried to stop it once. Sheriff Rudd, back then. He set up a barricade at the station. Men with rifles waiting. Midnight came, and so did the train. Rolled in, silent as the grave. Stepped forward, hand on his gun. "This train ain't real," he shouted. "'Tain't taking nobody else." The doors slid open. Light spilled across the cracked concrete. The smell of coal and oil filled the air. The deputies swore they saw something move inside. Figures in the seats, pale and still. Then the sheriff started walking. Slow, like he was in a dream. He dropped his rifle, dropped his hat, climbed the steps, and vanished into the light. The doors closed. The train left. The deputies fired at it, but the bullets passed through like smoke. And when the train came again the next Friday, Sheriff Rudd's shadow was in the window. The town learned after that. No one tried to fight it. No one went near the station at midnight, but sometimes people disappeared anyway. Folks whispered the train called to them, through dreams, through voices, in the dark. Time to board, time to ride. Teenagers still dared each other, of course. They always do. They'd hide in the weeds and wait, shaking cans of beer, pretending they weren't scared. Most of them never got closer than a few feet. The smart ones ran when the headlights cut through the night, but not all of them. One summer, 3 kids from the high school vanished the same night. The next week, their shadows were on the train. One had his hand pressed against the glass, blood smeared down the window. Another had her head bowed, hair hanging like a curtain. The third just stared, smiling too wide. Now, folks say the train is filling up, that every week there are more faces, more shapes, that the windows are so crowded you can barely see the empty seats. And some swear the faces aren't just strangers anymore. Some swear they've seen their own loved ones on board. A father long buried, a child lost to sickness, a wife gone too soon. The train tempts them with what they miss, promises a reunion, but those who step inside never come back whole. One Friday night, a woman named Carol Murphy stood on the platform, tears streaming down her face. Her little boy had died the year before. And there he was, in the window, smiling at her, reaching out. She screamed his name, ran forward, arms wide. The deputies tried to hold her back, but she slipped free. She leaped onto the train just as the doors closed. The last anyone saw of her, she was pounding on the glass, her face twisted in horror, her boy beside her. Both of them shadows now. The train doesn't stop anywhere else. It's just at Blackwater. Every Friday at midnight, it pulls in, it waits, it leaves. Always the same. And the town waits too. Some lock their doors and pray. Some watch from a distance, drawn like moths to flame. Some hear the whistle in their dreams. One day, people say, the train will be full. Every seat taken, every window dark with faces. And when that happens, it won't leave Blackwater anymore. It'll stay, okay? And the doors will open wide. Story 8 by Blackwater. When the state built the dam, they said it was progress. A brand new reservoir to supply water for half the county. Jobs, money, growth. But to make it, they had to drown a town. It was called Marlow. Just a speck on the map, 300 people. A church, a diner, a schoolhouse. They gave the folks 6 months to pack up, then brought in bulldozers. The ones who refused were forced out. After that, they flooded it. Water rose slow and steady, swallowing homes, fields, and graves. By spring, Marlow was gone. The reservoir was christened Blackwater Lake. Fishermen came. Families picnicked on the shore. Kids swam where the roads used to be. They said it was good for the county. Said the past was past, but the dead don't always stay buried. It started one summer night. A couple of teenagers were parked by the dam windows, fogged, radio humming low. Just after midnight, they heard church bells, faint, far away. They laughed at first, bells under the water, but then they saw it. Out in the lake, where the moon hit the waves, something sharp broke the surface. A spire, black and wet, the steeple of Marlowe's church. The boy swore he saw shapes clinging to it, cave figures, climbing, dripping, pulling themselves free. The time the girl stopped screaming, the car wouldn't start. They both vanished. Taya's car was found abandoned the next morning. Doors open, seats soaked, like someone had dragged them out, dripping wet. The sheriff said it was kids making up stories. But more folks heard the bells. More saw the steeple rise when the water dipped at midnight, and more went missing. Some swore they heard voices calling from the shore, familiar voices. A mother dead 10 years, a brother lost in the war, a child drowned in the reservoir itself. The drowned townsfolk came back walking, clothes sodden, skin pale and wrinkled, mouths full of water. They shuffled up from the waves, whispering names. Come home, that's what they said, always the same. Come home, and some people listened. Old John Hart, whose wife had passed before the dam was even built, walked into the water one night, arms outstretched. Neighbors watched him go. He didn't fight, didn't scream, just let the black water close over his head. A week later, his voice was heard on the shore, soft and wet, calling his daughter's name. The town tried to keep it quiet, but word got out. No one swam in Blackwater Lake anymore. Fishermen stopped coming. The picnic tables rotted in the weeds. But the drowned didn't stop. Every year, more of them came. More names whispered in the dark. Some folks said Marlowe hadn't wanted to be buried, said the town itself was angry, that the church, the graves, the homes they remembered, and they wanted their people back. Others said it wasn't the town at all, that it was something in the water, something that fed on grief, on longing, pulling people under so it could wear their faces. Whatever it was, it kept growing. One fall night, a group of teenagers dared each other to row out to the steeple. They never came back. Their boat was found floating upside down, seats empty, oars gone. But weeks later, people swore they saw the kids walking through town, wet footprints leading down the middle of Main Street, their eyes black as the water. The sheriff locked his doors after that. Kay said he heard his own son's voice at night, calling from the lake. His boy had drowned years ago. The time winter came, no one lived within miles of Blackwater Lake. Houses emptied, businesses closed. The whole county shrank away from it, leaving the reservoir alone, still and dark. Sometimes, if you drive past on a moonlit night, you'll see ripples where the water should be flat. You'll hear bells tolling faintly under the waves. And if you're unlucky, you'll see the steeple rise, black and dripping, breaking the surface. Then you'll hear them, voices on the wind, whispering from the shore, calling your name. If you listen too long, if you answer back, you'll find yourself walking toward the water, feet dragging, heart pounding. And once you step in, the black water closes over you. Cold hands pull you down. Your lungs fill. And when you open your mouth to scream, it's only the church bells that answer. The next time the steeple rises, someone else will hear your voice, whispering their name. Story 9 by Tooth Man is started with the children. First, it seemed small. Little Sarah Duggan came to school one morning with tears in her eyes, saying the tooth she had felt wiggling the night before was conned. But there was no tooth under her pillow, and no quarter either, just a damp spot on the sheet. Her teacher laughed and told her maybe she swallowed it in her sleep. It happened sometimes. But then it happened to 2 more kids, Tommy Ellsworth, Grace Carmichael, Henry Wilcox. Each one swore the same thing. Their loose teeth disappeared overnight. No money left behind, no tooth fairy note, nothing but a strange wet mark on the pillow. At first, parents rolled their eyes, blaming forgetfulness, maybe even pranks between kids, but the stories stacked up. And soon, the children began to whisper. They whispered about the man who came at night. They called him the Tooth Man. He was pale, they said, as pale as candle wax, with hair the color of dirty snow. He crept into bedrooms while everyone slept, bending low over the beds. His breath smelled like pennies and spoiled milk. And when he smiled, his mouth stretched too wide, filled with rows and rows of teeth. Not just one row like a normal man, dozens. Small ones, jagged ones, baby teeth, yellow teeth, teeth stacked on teeth until it looked like his mouth had no end. Teeth are promises, he whispered to them. And promises must be kept. Of course, the parents didn't believe it. What child doesn't make up monsters? They told themselves it was hysteria, a game that had spread like a sickness, until Mrs. Wilcox woke up one night and found muddy footprints on her son's bedroom carpet. They were small, narrow prints, like bare feet, only the toes were long. Too long, and Henry was gone. The police searched for days. Dogs sniffed the woods. Neighbors were questioned. But there was nothing. Henry had vanished, and the only thing left behind was a damp circle on the pillow where his head had been. After that, the town changed. Parents nailed their windows shut, kept their kids in their own beds, slept with baseball bats and hunting rifles. But still, the teeth went missing. One boy said he woke in the middle of the night and saw the Tooth Man crouched over his sister's bed. Said his head nearly brushed the ceiling, his long fingers spread over her like a net. Said he saw him slip something sharp and white from her mouth and tuck it into his coat. The boy screamed. His father burst into the room with a shotgun. But the pale man was already gone. The sister's tooth was gone too. By then, even the adults couldn't deny it. Something was happening. Something wrong. More children vanished, one by one. Always the same story. A loose tooth, a missing tooth, then nothing but shadows at the window and whispers in the night. The sheriff tried to explain it. Awake nappers, runaways, anything but what the kids described. But when his own granddaughter disappeared, leaving behind a pillow soaked through with spit and blood, his face turned gray. He resigned the next morning. The whispers grew louder. Folks said the Tooth Man had always been here, that he came with the founding of the town, collecting his due every few generations. Teeth were promises, after all, and promises must be kept. Old Mrs. Hatch told a story then. Said when she was a girl, she'd lost a tooth to the Tooth Man too, but she'd hidden under her blanket and prayed to God to keep her. In the morning, her tooth was still gone, but she was alive. Not all of us get spared, she said, rocking in her chair. Some he takes whole, some he saves for later. But he always comes back. The town stopped talking after that. Kier was thick as smoke. People stopped going out after dark. Children were watched like hawks, and yet, every week, another one disappeared. One night, little Emily Parker left a note for her parents. In shaky handwriting, she wrote, "He says he's almost finished. He says he just needs a few more promises. Then he'll leave." They found the note on her empty bed, the pillow soaked through, the sheets marked with small, wet footprints. Then, no one doubted. Some folks tried to leave town, packing up in the middle of the night, driving until their tanks were empty. But it didn't help. The Tooth Man followed. One family's car was found abandoned 50 miles away, doors open, headlights still on. In the back seat, a single baby tooth lay on the upholstery. The townsfolk stopped trying to run. They waited, locked their doors, prayed, hoped it wouldn't be their child next. But hope didn't last long. On the last Friday of October, the town gathered in the square. Someone had lit torches. Someone else had brought a Bible. They said they'd face him together. Midnight, the air grew cold. The torches guttered, and from the shadows between the buildings, he came. The Tooth Man. He was taller than any of them remembered. His body, bent and crooked, skin the color of bone. His mouth stretched wide, wider than a human mouth should go, spilling with teeth, rows and rows that clicked as he walked. His coat bulged, heavy with what he carried inside. The children whimpered, clutching their parents' hands. The Tooth Man raised a finger, long and pale. His voice rattled like stones in a jar. "Teeth are promises," he said, "and promises must be kept." Then he smiled, and hundreds of teeth flashed in the firelight. Some of the parents swore they recognized them, their children's teeth, their own teeth, teeth from generations gone. The crowd broke. People screamed, ran, fell. The sheriff fired his gun, but the bullet vanished into the pale man's body like smoke. The Tooth Man stepped into the square. Children were pulled from their parents' arms, one by one, teeth plucked from their mouths with fingers quick as knives. They screamed, blood running down their chins as he tucked the teeth into his coat. By dawn, 20 children were gone. The rest of the town fled for good. They left their homes, their shops, their fields, left everything behind. And the Tooth Man, he was never seen again. But sometimes, if you drive through the ruins of that place, you'll find strange things. Little handprints on the windows of abandoned houses, wet marks on old pillows, a child's tooth left on a step, gleaming in the dust. And at night, if you listen close, you'll hear him, a whisper through the dark. Teeth are promises, and promises must be kept. Then the clicking sound begins, like hundreds of teeth gnashing together, closer and closer. You ever hear a song you wish you hadn't? Not because it was bad, not because it was annoying, but because it felt wrong, like it was written for you, like it knew something about you it shouldn't. That's how it started for Billy Cross. It's the late night DJ on WYLD 103.7. Billy had been spinning records for 20 years. Most nights, it was the same requests for Zeppelin, Springsteen, Fleetwood Mac. Sometimes he'd mix in newer stuff just to keep the kids awake on their way home from diners and bars. His voice was smooth, steady, the kind you trusted when the roads were dark and the snow came down hard. But then the records started coming. The first one arrived in a plain brown sleeve. No note, no return address. Just a 12-inch vinyl tucked into a padded envelope with Billy's name written in neat block letters. He almost tossed it. Jay's got plenty of junk demo tapes, mixtapes, desperate bands hoping for a spin. But this was a record, a real record. And when he dropped the needle, something about the sound hooked him. It was scratchy, like it had been pressed in somebody's basement. A low hum under the melody, a woman's voice singing soft and slow. The lyrics were strange. He walks home, drunk by the overpass. A shadow waits where the lamppost cracks. It wasn't polished, not radio friendly, but Billy played it anyway. Once. Thought maybe some insomniac out there would get a kick out of it. The next morning, a man was found dead under the overpass on Route 9. His throat had been cut. Billy didn't think much of it at first. Coincidence, right? Songs are full of weird lyrics. He told himself not to be paranoid. But a week later, another envelope came. Same brown sleeve. No return address. The song was darker. The mother weeps in her kitchen chair. Her boy lies still at the bottom stair. Billy hesitated before playing it. His fingers hovered over the turntable, but the studio was quiet, the red on-air light burning, and maybe he just wanted something new to break the monotony, so he spun it. 3 days later, a boy from town fell down the staircase in his home, snapped his neck. His mother found him, just like the song said. Billy didn't sleep that night. By the third record, he knew something was wrong. The preacher hides his secret sin. The choir sings as the fire begins. It's time. Billy didn't play it. He shoved the record back in its sleeve and locked it in his desk. Told himself that if he didn't air it, nothing would happen. But the fire at the church still happened. The preacher still burned inside. Billy sat in the control booth that night, staring at the empty turntable, his hands trembling. I felt sick, like he'd swallowed a mouthful of hash. The records kept coming. Every Friday, like clockwork, another one slid through the mail slot. No postage, no address, just his name. He tried throwing one away once, dumped it in the trash out back. Next morning, it was sitting on his desk in the studio, the sleeve damp with dew, but the vinyl untouched. The songs got worse. Murders, accidents, suicides. Each one whispered in that same soft, haunting voice. Always, a few days before it happened, Billy started drinking more, smoking in the booth when no one was around. His coworkers said he looked like hell. He told them he was fine, but the truth was he felt like the walls were closing in. He stopped answering the phone on air, stopped taking requests, just played whatever he had to, waiting for the next envelope. And the town noticed. People whispered that WYOD was cursed, that bad things happened after Billy's shift. Parents turned off the radio at night, but still, the tragedies kept coming. Finally, one night, Billy couldn't take it anymore. He took the latest record, the 10th one, and held it in his hands. The sleeve was heavier than the others, damp, as though it had been pulled from water. He poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon, lit a cigarette, and dropped the needle. The song began like the others, soft and scratchy, that woman's voice winding through static. The DJ talks to an empty room, his voice a dirge, his mouth a tomb. Billy froze. He spins the record, the last broadcast. His blood will flow. The signal won't last. His cigarette dropped from his lips. Smoke curled against the mic. The lyrics went on, describing the studio, the exact studio he was sitting in, describing him, the bourbon glass on the desk, the ashtray overflowing, even the flickering fluorescent bulb above the soundboard. And then the last verse. He opens the door when the knock comes late, and the needle skips as he meets his fate. Billy's heart thudded in his chest. Knock sounded on the studio door. Soft, slow. He stared at it, frozen in his chair. The record spun on, the voice humming through the static. The knock came again. Billy stood. His knees shook. He told himself not to open it, not to be stupid, but his hand moved anyway, as though pulled by strings. The knob turned cold in his grip. He opened the door, and what he saw made his mind snap like a brittle twig. It was the woman, the singer, his pale face, hair long and dark, eyes black as vinyl grooves. Her mouth curved into a smile. "You played them well," she whispered. "Now it's time for the last song." Billy tried to scream, but her hand was already at his throat, cold, bony fingers digging in. The record skipped behind him, looping the same scratchy line again and again. His blood will flow. The signal won't last. The mic picked up the sound of his strangled gasps. Listeners on the late shift heard it, thought it was part of the show, some strange experimental track. Mid silence. When the morning crew arrived, the studio was empty. Still no sign of Billy. Just the record spinning on the turntable, the needle worn down to a hiss of static. The brown envelope lay on the desk. Inside was another vinyl, a fresh one. The label read, Track 11.